I'm not Canadian. I just came yesterday. Or 2 days ago. Yeah, I came 2 days ago. And I come from the heart of America in a place called Misery, also known as Missouri. And you know what they say, misery loves company. So if you're ever in the area, stop by. And where I live, it is not agriculture land, it is cattle land. And so there's lots of cattle and there's lots of grass, and once you start digging a few inches under the ground, you realize why it's not agriculture land, because we have rocks, and rocks. But we're not doing agriculture at our place. My name is Dr. Mark Sandoval, and my background is emergency medicine, lifestyle medicine, and counseling. So I have traversed a number of different things. I've worked in the hospital, I've worked in the clinic, I've run the ICU, I've been a department head in ER and family practice, but I've also worked in a lifestyle center and then ran the lifestyle center and then became president of the institute and then transitioned into dealing with issues of the mind, because I realized that these were behind really everything that individuals struggle with. And so there's a lot of things to talk about, and I'm still scratching my head going, okay, well, what do I talk about? And I think there was probably some advertisement in regards to stress management. And so we'll touch a little bit upon that, but we're also going to touch a little bit upon lessons that nature can teach us. And we'll see what we can discover through all of it. Anybody here experience stress? Okay. Yes, that's a knowing laugh. Yes. So yes, we all experience stress to one degree or another. And sometimes it's a little bit difficult for us to identify what's going on when we have stress responses, except when it's something that's short term. So imagine with me that you're going on a walk and it's dark, and now you hear a dog, and it sounds like a very big dog, and you're in an unfamiliar area, and that dog now is racing in your direction, and in the moonlight you can see teeth coming towards you. And you know, it has a very deep bark. It's not like a little, you know that it's going to nibble on your toes. This is one that could nibble on your throat. And so, you know, it's coming very fast in your direction. Well, it doesn't take very long for you to have a stress response. And that stress response then from the brain to the middle part of the brain in the limbic system, and then to your hypothalamus, which is in the center part of your brain, and then down your brainstem to your spinal cord, through your sympathetic chain ganglia, you are going to send signals to the different parts of the body, including your adrenal glands. And your adrenal glands are going to start dumping epinephrine and norepinephrine, or you might know it as adrenaline or noradrenaline, into the system. And that's going to circulate and go to every cell of the body. And your physiology is going to change quite quickly. Your pupils dilate, your blood vessels constrict in the skin, but the blood vessels dilate in the muscles. And that's a good thing, because if you get bit by the dog, you don't want to bleed as much, but you want to get blood to the muscles so that you can run or fight or do something of that nature. You have increased blood flow going to the brain, and your liver breaks down glycogen, which is a big molecule of sugar attached together, and it starts breaking it up into pieces and dumping it into the bloodstream so that the sugar can get to the muscles and to the other parts of your body so that you can function. And your blood pressure can double in about 5 seconds. All right? So this is what happens in what we call an acute stress response. So acute meaning that it's short term. But what happens if you have the dog chasing you every day? And what happens if you have the dog chasing you multiple times throughout the day, or many hours throughout the day? Well, the stress response changes. And some problems start arising physiologically. And with these chemicals that are released if they get released and then they continue to be released and so on in higher dosages, we might say, then what happens is the cells start deregulating or downregulating the receptors for those particular hormones or those particular chemicals. And when it downregulates those hormones, then it changes how the cells respond, and it changes how the cells respond under normal conditions as well. And there are many different effects that then happen in the body's system under the influence of this, now what we would call a chronic stress response, a long-term stress response. And it has effects, for example, on your immune system. So individuals that are under a chronic stress response tend to be more susceptible to infections, right? And fear is a type of chronic stress response. And probably all of us remember a big worldwide chronic stress response that everybody had about 6 years ago, right? And so we had COVID going around the world. And what the news was not focusing on, and in fact was contributing to, was the component where if individuals are chronically under fear, right, there's chronically a fear response, that decreases your immune system's function, it increases your susceptibility, and indeed, I suspect that there are probably many individuals that became ill or were susceptible or had an increased susceptibility simply because of newscasting, right? And following the news and how many cases there were and how fast the cases were growing and so on. So we can gather or we can have chronic stress responses that come from many different areas in our lives, including the entertainment that we watch, the news that we participate in. But one of the greatest areas that we have stress responses and chronic stress responses in is home. And it's not the home that you live in, it's the people that live there with you, right? So relationships tend to be a big point of a stress response and then having chronic stress responses as well. Now, before I go further into that, there are things that you can do from a physical standpoint that helps out with the body's adjustment to or improvement from chronic stress responses as well. And one of them you're sitting amongst, right? And that is healthy food. So healthy nutrition that's high in antioxidants and micronutrients and so on, that is going to nourish the system in such a way that you are going to be less susceptible to infections. You're going to be higher functioning as far as mental function is concerned, and you are going to have a stronger healing response, and you can tolerate more stressors when you have healthy nutrition than you can if you do not. Right? So nutrition is definitely an important component when it comes to being able to handle long-term stress or long-term stressors. Right? It's not going to fix everything, of course. You can, if you continue stressing and you eat well, it's a good thing that you're eating well, but you don't want to continue stressing. Right? But it is something that helps. Another thing that helps significantly, and there's quite a bit of research for it, and that is exercise. Right? So having regular, consistent exercise is something that helps to also mitigate the stress response, because in the exercise process, you have an increased capacity to flush those extra chemicals out of the system, because you're sweating, and some of it you're going to release through the sweat. But also you're going to increase the function of your liver and your kidneys and even your lungs as well, which are part of your eliminatory organs in order to get rid of excess of the chemicals that are in your system. And exercise doesn't have to be something that is very complex, and it doesn't necessarily need a gymnasium. You can just volunteer here, and you can get your exercise by picking greens and doing other things like that. Now I can advertise for that because I'm not from here. And anyway, so gardening is actually a wonderful, wonderful means of exercise and is stress reducing, because not only does it give you the physical exercise and the physical components of it, but it also gives you something that is purposeful, right? So you're working towards, you're not only getting the exercise, but you also have something that is providing purpose in your life, right? Helping to grow something that's going to be productive, that will eventually be food and will then contribute to greater well-being, right? And so those are components that are good as well. Walking is a wonderful exercise. It's a wonderful exercise. In fact, there's some research to indicate that simply walking is better than, in the long run, is better than some of your more intense exercises like running or jogging. You have with intermittent training and with intense intermittent training, you have greater advances that you make in a shorter period of time, but the research doesn't necessarily show that it has greater effects over a long term than if you were just a walker on a daily basis. So it doesn't have to be something that's complex, but walking is something that's actually quite simple and most people can participate in. And hydration is something that's important as well. You know, the solution to pollution is dilution, right? Got to get that in the right order. And, so proper hydration is going to be something that's helpful as well. All of your cells exist and function in the context of water. And if you were to dry out, well, then you wouldn't be functioning at all, and we would probably be using you for fertilizer. That's a morbid thought. Okay, sorry about that. And anyway, so hydration is something that is important, and maintaining that hydration can be helpful as well. One of my early motivations for increasing my hydration was the headaches that I was suffering from on several times a week, and they were getting more and more debilitating. And then I started reading a little bit more about water, and so I started drinking water, and I started carrying a water bottle with me so I could measure how much water that I'm drinking, because each time I lift it up, I know how heavy it is, and I know how much I haven't or I have drunk, and how much I need to drink before the end of the day. And as I started drinking more and more water, then the headaches started going away, and it's very rare that I have a headache now, because everywhere I go, I carry water with me. And that's something that's important too. Now, one thing that it's probably less known in the research community in relation to stress and health and immune function, and that is simply being outdoors. There have been a number of studies that have been done. Japan actually is a leader in the research in relation to health and being outdoors and its impact upon health. And there have been a number of studies that have been done taking individuals and putting them through a similar length and a similar intensity of exercise, i.e. walking for a certain distance. And with certain groups of individuals, they'll have them in the city and they will walk together for a certain distance. And other groups, they will take them out into the forest or out into the country, and they will walk for a certain distance. And they measure blood tests, they measure blood pressure, they look at inflammatory markers and so on before they do this, and then after they do this, and then follow up for a period of time. And the research shows that if you just go for a walk outside in nature, it decreases your blood pressure, it improves your cardiovascular wellness scores on a number of levels, it increases your immune system function, it decreases your inflammatory markers, it increases mental acuity, and it appears that the effects last for up to about 7 days from a single 1 hour walk episode out in nature, right? So even if it's a weekend and you take the weekend and you go out and you walk in nature, it can have a week-long effect that in your system in relation to the physical effects that come from there. Right? So all of these are components that are helpful in regards to stress. But what can we do about some of the major stressors which have to do with our relationships? Right? And here's where some of the illustrations in nature are helpful. Right? So I have a flower here, and I just grabbed it off the table back there, and I'm going to put it back when I'm done because I didn't ask for permission, but I think I'm okay to have it. All right, I got the thumbs up. Very good. So I have a flower here. Now the flower is you know, it's producing the flower. It's a beautiful flower and so on, but the flower doesn't come from itself. Right? If it was a more complex bush or tree, then it would have branches that it's growing off of. And so the flower is representing the product or the fruit that's coming from it. And if it's healthy, then it's going to produce a healthy flower. And from a health analogy standpoint, that represents our symptoms. Right? So if you have things going on well in the system behind the flower, then you're going to end up with healthy symptoms. Right? If things are not going well in the rest of the system, then your symptoms are going to become problematic, like what I discussed before, headache. Headache is a type of symptom. Pain, coughing, itch, runny nose, sore throat, and rashes, other things of that nature. Those are all negative symptoms that we might develop. And if you had a flower that was diseased, and I'm only going to run through an imaginary scene, would it be helpful to pluck off the flower? Well, it's not going to cause any harm to pluck it off, but have I fixed the problem? No, I haven't fixed the problem because the problem lies deeper than that. Right? Now, the stem or the branch at this point, the branch that the flower is growing on, is in this case going to represent our behaviors. So the things that we eat, the things that we drink, the things that we do, the things that we participate in, and our behaviors are important because, well, if you have healthy behaviors, just like if you have a healthy stem, then if you have a healthy stem, then you're going to end up with a healthy flower on top. And so healthy behaviors are important as well for us to participate in because they are going to promote healthy symptoms. Not that it's going to guarantee healthy symptoms, but it's going to promote healthy symptoms. But the stem grows off of, well, what we might call, I'm just going to use tree terminology, and it grows off of the trunk, right? Or the base of the flower. And when it comes to like a trunk of a tree, and we're going to see thousands of, tens of thousands, 10,500 apple trees, right? Or fruit trees that are around here. Anyways, all of them has a trunk, and the trunk represents our needs, right? Now, you need what you need because you are what you are. What you are determines what you need. If you were a salamander, then there are certain things that you will need that are different than a human. If you're a human, you have certain needs that are different than a plant. And if you're a plant, then it has different needs and so on. And there's no choice for what you are, and there's no choice for what you need. What you need is fixed, right? You need food, and the type of food that you need is similar to what other people need as well. Right? If we tried to eat the dirt, well, that would work for plants, but that doesn't work for humans. And if we try to extract oxygen from water, well, that works from fish, but it doesn't work for us. Right? So we need what we need because we are what we are. But everything that we need, just like the plant, must come from outside of it. Right? The water that the plant needs does not come from inside the plant. And how do beliefs function? Well, you end up doing what you believe. For example, if you believe that you need Coca-Cola, what are you going to do? Yeah, you're going to drink Coca-Cola. But do you actually need Coca-Cola? Don't tell Coca-Cola I told you. Right? So I don't want to get sued. All right, so no, you don't actually need Coca-Cola, but if you had Coca-Cola versus having nothing, Well, you would live longer with Coca-Cola than nothing, because Coca-Cola actually contains some things that you need. For example, most of it is water, right? And you need water. And there is some sugar, and it's not in the best form, right? It's not in the best form, but if you had nothing versus it would keep you alive a little bit longer, but it also has stuff in there that you don't need. So while you're consuming something that you do need, you're also consuming something that you don't need, and you're putting some things in the system that the system is not optimally designed for. And so it's going to result in some kind of dysfunction. So what you believe is going to drive how you behave. And remember, behavior is like the stem down here. If the behaviors are not good, it's not going to support good symptoms, right? And so what's going on in the roots is something that's really important. Now, the roots, what if I take this flower and I take its roots out of the soil, and I take this flower and I pick its roots out of the soil, and then I put this flower's roots in the second flower and the second flower's roots in the first flower? What's going to happen? They're both going to die, right? They're both going to die. Why? Well, because a flower does not need another flower as its source. A flower needs soil, right? It needs the nutrients that come from the soil as its source. Now, it's possible that I could graft the one flower and get its roots into the second flower, and as long as the second flower remains in the soil, that the first one could be supported from the second one as the second one serves as a channel, right? It can take from the source, and then it can serve as a channel, and then it can supply some of the needs that are needed for the first flower. But if I take them both out of the soil and I put them into each other, well, they're going to die. And if I take 1,000,000 flowers and I put them all with their roots in each other, what's going to happen with 1,000,000 flowers? With no soil. Yeah, well, they're going to die, right? Because no flower can be a source for another flower, because flowers have the same needs, right? All right, so where does a lot of our stress come from? Well, a lot of our stress comes from the fact that we're a little bit confused, not consciously, but we're a little bit confused unconsciously. And our confusion unconsciously is that we have the idea from a human standpoint that I, as one human, can take another human and I can plant my roots in them, right? And now I have the other person as my source, and then they plant their roots in me, and so each of us have our roots in each other. What's going to happen? Problems, chaos, disappointment, frustration, right? All of these things are going to come. Why? Because we have the expectation that the other person is going to satisfy our need, but the other person has the same needs that we do, right? Every human has essentially the same needs. Yes, some of us need to eat more often and more at a time. Others can eat less often and not as much at a time, but everybody's got to eat, right? Everybody's got to breathe, and so on. But we don't only have physical needs, we also have what some call emotional needs, right? How many people need love? Yeah, I've been around the world, spoken to many, many, many thousands of people, and I have asked many different audiences, is there anybody here that doesn't need love? And I've had 2 positive responses. Both of them from 14-year-old males that were in the audience, and they affirmed that oh no, I don't need love, and so on. But what were they looking for? They were looking for a laugh. They were looking for attention. Attention is a part of or a form of love, right? So love includes like acceptance, attention, belonging, harmony, security, understanding, compassion, companionship, and so on. All of these are various different aspects of love, and everybody needs love, right? And there's not an exception to that somebody needs love, right? So when I have a problem, and I run into the problem when I take somebody else who needs love, and I need love, and now I try to make them my source of love. And when I try to make them my source of love, then, well, they're trying to make me their source of love, and each of us are having a struggle from that standpoint. And it ends up being, so you end up kind of draining each other, right? Right? You might not have had that experience. I'm married for 27 years, and I have 6 children, and I know from personal experience. And of course, I've had many, many patients, and then I now counsel with a lot of individuals. And this is really a fundamental difficulty that we run into in relation to sourcing, right? Because now we go to something that needs what we need in order to get what we need, and then it doesn't work. If I knock over the bottle, what can come out of the bottle? Whatever's in it. There's nothing inside, nothing's going to come out, right? All that can come out is what's inside. And so it's true for people as well. What comes out of somebody comes out of them because that's what's in them, right? Now, I have the tendency, my tendency is to blame somebody else for what comes out of me, right? So if I get upset, I blame my children for behaving a certain way in order for me to get upset. But if I continue from that standpoint, then I never actually really learn. I don't actually really learn from what's coming out of me, because now I blame somebody around me for what comes out of me, rather than seeing that what comes out of me because that's in me, and that's something that I need to work on, right? If it's my issue and I need to work on it, but now I think it's somebody else's issue and I want them to work on it, so that if they're fixed, I can be fixed, well, I'm in trouble. Because if I need somebody else to be okay in order for me to be okay, how can I ever guarantee that I'm going to be okay? Right? I can't. Right? And these are some things that I run into, or the challenges that we deal with in counseling with individuals. Now, on the other side, it's nice and helpful to understand that when somebody else spills out in your direction, it's not about you. Right? When somebody spills out in your direction, it's not about you. It's about them. Because it couldn't come out of them if it wasn't already in them, right? So if they add your name to it and they spill out in your direction, it's still not about you, even though it has your name attached to it, because it came out of them, and so it represents what's in them. But oftentimes I take it as it's about me when somebody says something or does something in my direction, and so I take it personal, because I have a little bit of a backwards perception in relation to it. Right? So most of the stress that we experience in our lives is not necessarily because of what happens, although there are things that are happening for sure. But it comes because of our perspective of what's happening. And indeed, I find, and when I counsel with individuals, the pathway to freedom is not a pathway of trying to fix everybody else around me. The pathway is the adoption of a new perspective, right? And if I can see things from a better way, then I can have a better response to what people are saying and what they're doing and how they're responding and so on. And this is something that's really important for us. And so, yes, eat healthy, please. Exercise, yes. Go for your walks. Go for your walks outdoors in nature. That's important. All of these are going to help you with stress. But it's also pursuing a better perspective, right? A perspective where you find a source that has what you need, and a perspective where you see others' actions and reactions from a better perspective so that you don't take it personally. And when you don't take it personally, it's not so much of a stressor to you, right? Then they get to be them, and they get to behave how they are, and I get to be me, and I get to not get caught up in everybody else's stuff. And when everybody else's burden doesn't have to be the one that I make my burden, then it significantly reduces the stress that I have to deal with. Right? There's so much more to say about that, but I had the 5-minute call 5 minutes ago. And so I am going to stop at that point, and we'll turn it over to the next segment.